Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our, not virtual anymore, live and virtual. Hybrid, right. Board meeting this evening. Let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilor
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, John. So tonight, I know it's 6:31 already, but the open podium starts at 6:30 or right after the Pledge of Allegiance. And we do have a full night tonight with some pre-registered. Now I understand the topic is has to do with the solar energy farm that is being proposed over on Salt Springs. So we do have 4 people, and I only ask that since we have 15 minutes, that's 3 minutes and 45 seconds each that you would present. If all 4 of you would like to talk, and I think Allison, you have some that also are on virtual.
Yes, I have one virtual speaker so far, and Mr. Bushnell, is he in the room? No?
I mean, if you're all, if it's gonna be a repeated thing, I mean, if you can keep it shorter, maybe 2 minutes, but if we're all saying the same thing, and then we can talk a little bit about the solar program that's being presented, I believe, to the planning board on Monday. So Dave Morocco, I think you're up first, Dave, so welcome to the, you introduce yourself and all that.
Yes, thank you for giving me the time to speak tonight. My name is David Morocco. I'm a resident of the town of Manlius and been here for 55 years. I've been working here for 35 years, and I'm a developer. I'm here tonight. I'll try to keep it going quickly. I get cut off, so I'm going to do my request right out of the gate here. So I'm requesting that we enact a moratorium for these solar fields at this point in time. I'm aware that you have engaged in a comprehensive plan and a master plan, which I've been through at least 4 different villages or towns. Casanova, New York, who just enacted the moratorium, I think, on June 14th, which was last week. They're very good planners. I went through their comprehensive plan 10 years ago. They take it serious, and I'm in Saratoga, the city of Saratoga, that county. I was involved in stuff there, Lima, New York. So, when you're doing this comprehensive plan and we're spending $150,000 of taxpayer dollars, I just think that right now we need to slow down and get this thing in place. And I would request that we would schedule a public hearing as quickly as your next meeting, if we could, to keep it moving. My reasoning for this is that the 5 fields that have already arrays, solar panel fields that have already been approved, 2 in 2020, 2 in 2021, and then there's one that dates back as far as Colomer Road. I believe it was in front of the board in 2014, or it was revised, but now I'll use 2017.
Yeah, 17.
None of these projects have started. They're not shoveling the ground. Maybe we could have learned from some of this stuff, if they did start, before we start approving even more. The existing law doesn't really, we're not geared up right now for this large generation solar panel fields. So I just think that studies should be done, stick to, find a place in the comprehensive plan that we can find better locations for these solar panel fields, and just find the best areas. Now we have 2 more proposals for Duguid Road and Salt Springs, which is just alarming. And there's hundreds of people that were not aware of this in our area. You know, we need our boards to do a great job reviewing projects, whether it's solar or it's a development. We really need you to investigate this stuff and do the right thing for our town taxpayers. And make sure this solar development is safe and doesn't devaluate our properties, because some of this stuff, it's impossible to hide. And some of it's coming right on top of me up the road here. So, you know, things like I see your item 8, pilots in place and negotiated clearly. Pilots are complicated. I've done them. I just did one in the last year. They're complicated. You have to establish values. We got to make sure taxes are going to get paid, and this, we're not going to get gypped like the town of Clay. Bonding and the deposits posted for the end life and the restoration of the land and the disposal of the solar panels. You know, this could be $1 million for a deposit on each one of these projects. I don't know if this is all in place. I don't know if you've done that. I see you're going to work on it tonight, I guess. I feel that the property owner is unaware of what the consequences could be. They could get stuck with the bill at the end as far as the cleanup, restoration, disposal of the solar panels. And who's guaranteed? I see these folks coming in. I don't know who they are. They're not from this town. And who are we going to hold responsible? I don't think these bonds are available for more than a year or two, from what I've been told. I'm not quite sure. In closing, an example of poor planning and moving too fast is I'm up in an area right now north Manlius, Salt Springs Road. We're in a war zone right now. We have a water district we're trying to, people are trying to do, which I think is a great idea, but I think it needs a lot more work. We've got solar panels and we've got Kinsella's quarry. And all of this needs to be put into this comprehensive plan. I know that those are being referred to, that we're in a comprehensive plan, so we need to put the brakes. And, it's crazy because I don't think the people who are working on this water have any idea that the land that these solar panels are going on, Manakak, it's the land directly next to me, 80 acres, is being sold. So that's the location where the water tower is supposed to go. On the top of the hill, 43 feet above. It's the only place that can go. If this property gets sold, there's no plan on that plan that I saw so far that has any access to get up there in the event that the water district gets formed either now or someday. I think that that's moving too fast. And, how are you going to get up there? The water's dead. It's a serious issue. And I think Kinsella, I can't speak for him, but I think that he'd be very interested in seeing that water get installed because he's going to have a lot of pushback with all the existing problems that we have with these wells, and it's real. So, that's my story. I'll tell you a real quick story. Once upon a time, I built a place on an amusement park in Manlius, and it's 128 apartments. It's called Suburban Park. That project took 2.5 years to get approvals, and that was zoned correctly R5. 2.5 years. There was a time where we took our time doing it. And to this day, I've owned it for 20 years, still own it, I'm local. I paid over $4 million in real estate taxes. And people fought that, but I got it approved. So it just, that's responsible development. I feel that that's a very good project, and further projects should be taking a lot more time to review. I appreciate your time.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ellison, I know we had, you mentioned Andrew Bushnell, and I don't know if he, in fact, if you get a chance to sign in to when you get the sheet over there. Why don't you come on up, Andrew? I was just explaining before you got here. we have 5 more minutes left of open podium, so if it's the same thing on solar, try to condense it because they covered a lot of it, you know.
He
so.
did.
Do we have other
sorry.
people that?
Oh, yeah, we
wanted
have
to
2
do-
others after.
Okay, so, I mean, I'm happy to extend open podium to make sure that there's time for everyone.
Well, I don't know if we need to do that or not right now because we have a long meeting tonight. So I'd like to just stay within the 15 minutes and then we can, we received emails, as you know, from Mary Kapinski and many others. So we can respond to those, but the point well taken. So go ahead.
So David's my neighbor.
Yeah.
And Lewis is directly my neighbor. And, why do people move to Manlius? I think you have to ask that, right? We move to Manlius for high quality schools, pastoral settings. It is a very strong community as a bedroom for, those companies in Syracuse who don't want to live in an urban environment. Look at where some of us have moved to. We moved here 9 years ago, but I grew up in New Jersey, which was once apple farms, rolling pastoral settings, is now tract housing, quick check gas stations on the corners, all in the concept of economic development, not for the people who live there, but it destroys what your community already is, what our community already is. So the solar farm makes money for somebody else. It does not help us directly. I'm not against solar. Put a panel on your house, have it face somewhere else, be on the solar grid, and you're fine. But let's not build something that takes up a pastoral view that destroys the value of that road and our community in multiple things. I hear there's another one approved on Do Good or looking to be approved on Do Good next to the school, next to all the wonderful homes on Do Good. So I'm not just speaking against the Salt Spring project, but there's others. We don't want to be like that. Most of the people in our community want to and pay the very high taxes of this environment. Believe me, they're higher than a lot of the other counties around us because we support the high quality school that we send our kids to, and we support the quality of the community in which we live. This detracts from it. So I ask, when you build a master plan, when the planning board looks at it, and when you as not economic fiduciaries per se, you are, but you're also, kind of the fiduciary for the quality of the community as a town board, to look at what you want this community to be like in 20 years. And I'm not against public water. I'm not against development. I'm not against solar. My honest answer is leave Salt Springs alone. The reason we bought out there, the reason people live out there is because we like a well, because we don't like development going down the road and making it tract housing and making it look like New Jersey. We bought because we want to be like Manlius. So that's all I'm saying.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And we have, Elsa gave me a couple more names.
Yes, in the room, we have Julie Fenster, and then I do see a hand up here, but it's just a number that's registered, so I'm not sure who the person is, so they have to change their name in order for us to be able to let them in, just in case we don't want to get Zoom bombed or anything like that. So if the registrant who's under 93356 can change your name so we know who you are, or use the Q&A to communicate that, we can move them in.
Okay, sure, yeah. Yeah, and just as a reminder, I'll Tim explain this a little bit. This is more or less what the planning board will be experiencing Monday.
30 seconds.
So it's like, there's a warm up for the planning board on Monday.
Right, this is a rehearsal.
Yeah.
I'm Julie Fenster.
Yeah.
I'm an author and historian, and I put my life savings into a horse farm up in Eagle Village. And I like to think that now that's turning into horse country. Because I write about history, I'm an expert on disaster. I got to tell you, there's nothing better than a book on a disaster, and nothing better ×3 than one on self-inflicted disaster. So I'm here just to tell you, don't let a historian like me write about Manlius in 20 years. Make sure, with my advice, make sure make sure the town and you know more about solar than any of the people coming to you. Reclamation, taxation, pollution, they all know every nook and cranny of those issues. And so I just want us to come out on top.
Very good.
Don't let me write about it.
Thank you.
Thank you. I didn't even put the timer on.
What's your button say? I just couldn't see from it. Oh, no. Oh, this is great. That's really helpful. Thank you.
I think, Mary Karpinski too, is she here?
I don't see her in the room and the hand went down.
Oh, okay.
And it's back up. So,
We need one, at least one more here, we can.
well, I'm not sure who that is. Do you want me to allow them to
Well,
talk?
usually, you know, they.
It's not our guideline.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Not yet.
We're about
Yeah,
to.
yeah.
Not yet, we haven't approved it yet?
They can get in under the wire then.
As long, I think as long as they
Well,
tell us who they
yeah.
are.
Yeah, let them introduce themselves to us, that'd be great. Thank you.
Are they unmuted now?
Okay, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Mary Karpinski. I wanted to address the board about the proposed project at 8540 Salt Springs Road. It's a project of a lot of concern to our neighbors. And I think that David Morocco did a wonderful summary. So I'm just going to add a couple of very brief points to this. First of all, I do believe that a moratorium should be considered. I don't know why these projects are being fast-tracked when there's a lot of questions, and it's very important to inform people who live in those areas as to what possible impacts might be. Time is needed not only to determine which sites in the community are best locations for these solar farms, but also to check the background of developers submitting proposals and for negotiating contractual agreements that are in the best interest of taxpayers. Since these projects are controversial, there are many stakeholders. Will town councilors publicly disclose any affiliations, past or present, that may present a conflict of interest? Are there members of the board who are financial advisors that may advise clients to buy or sell securities of companies that would supply products used in a typical solar installation? If the answer is yes, then recusal from voting should be stated. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mary.
Mr. Supervisor, can I just address one component that's come up a couple of times?
Yeah.
Mary, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
So one point of clarification, the solar projects are not being fast-tracked. The way that solar development works, it kind of goes in reverse. And we're learning as a board, even as the community is learning, and we're relying on experts from around the region who are coming and helping us to understand and helping the planning board to understand. So I don't want that to be the impression that we're fast-tracking these community solar arrays, because that's not the case at all. All of these projects are being thoroughly vetted, and we will be talking about that to a much more significant extent later in this meeting this evening. So to everyone who's here for the community solar concerns, I'd encourage you, if you care to stay and listen to that part of the meeting, I'd encourage you to do so, though it is being recorded and you can watch it at your leisure later on. But I wanted to clarify that, and I also want to say that we hear you. These concerns are not going beyond us. It's not like any of these projects is assumed just going to go through. Even if you're passionate about environmental sustainability, it doesn't mean that every solar project is a good project. That's just not the case. These are big companies that are using the community solar projects as a tax equity package. Like these are meant to be investments for people who are interested in such investments with the tax equity side of things. So we're evaluating the projects. We want to see good projects in the town as well. So I hope that can help you to feel at least a little bit better. We're not just pushing these through because we like solar. That's not the case at all. It's quite the opposite. Just because someone proposes a solar array doesn't mean that that's a project we want to see in our community. So thoroughly vetted, please stay. And I'm happy to, if anyone wants to email me up on this later on, I'd be happy to chat with anyone about this further after the culmination of the meeting if there are further questions.
Thank you, Caitlin. That was helpful insight. Tim, did you want to add anything as far as the fact that it is with the planning board right now, or in the process of it? I mean, you get one email from one of the board members regarding their concerns.
I was just gonna say, I know that we'll cover this too. I'm worried about doing things piecemeal because I feel like I have a few things to say too, but then so we're gonna,
Are we gonna talk about
You
this?
wanna-
We will be
we'll do it
talking,
later
this is
on under
coming up.
Sylvia.
is it all right?
We'll be under
We'll wait until.
We'll be under sustainability.
Yeah, I think it's under, I think we put it under sustainability. Is it?
We only, the public hearings were published for 6:35, but as you know, we don't start them now, and I
Yeah.
thought this may happen, and I almost put this up, right
Yeah.
after that, so.
Yeah, so we can,
We can deal with it when we get.
yeah, sure. Yeah, okay. So we'll move on then with the regular meeting. And so we've got three items, okay. So item 4 is the approval of minutes, June 9th, 2021 has been tabled. So that was easy. So we'll move on to item 5, which is abstract number 12.
Mr. Supervisor, I would like to move approval of abstract number 12 in the amount of $175,518.20.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed and carried. Very good, thank you. So now we can move on to item 6, which is the public hearing. And this is on the proposed law modification of the 2-year term for highway superintendent to a 4-year term. You all have the documents on it. I'll ask Attorney Proteski to give us an overview before we open the public hearing, and if we have any discussion amongst us, we can do that, and then if not, then we can open up the public hearing. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's relatively simple. This board has determined that it wanted to consider increasing the term of office of the highway superintendent from 2 years to 4 years, effective on January 1st, 2022. You have the right to do that under municipal home rule law. And it would be subject to permissive referendum, so we go to the voters this November.
Mandatory.
Mandatory, I'm sorry.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, it's mandatory referendum. And it would go to the voters this November to determine whether or not they believe it's a good idea.
Do we need a motion to open? the
Well,
public hearing?
unless you have any comments or any
Anybody,
board.
any questions for me about the local lots?
You all have,
Straightforward.
we're starting with the highway superintendent, so you'll
Yep.
like that. So if there's no question, I'll
I'll waive
ask
the
for a
reading.
motion. Yep,
I'll
thank you.
second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed and carried. Let me try the right one. All right, so with that, it's very similar to the open podium. When you get up, please introduce yourselves. Well, I'm looking at you like we're gonna to the public who would like to express their opinion on this. And you have whatever minutes it takes to discuss this with us, and we'll answer the questions best we can. So I will need a motion to open the public hearing.
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion to open the public hearing.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Very good. So do we have anyone in the room or that's virtual that has anything they'd like to say or comment on the resolution?
Well, I'll just say, as we wait, see if a hand goes
Yeah,
up.
go ahead.
Oh, yes, okay.
Mike?
Yep. Go ahead.
Oh, Mike.
Go ahead,
Mike Leroy. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, this is Mike Leroy. I'm absolutely in support of the 4-year. Rob has done a great job for this, for the town of Manlius, and we should extend this to 2 from 2 to 4 years.
Thank you.
There's a comment. All right. great.
Short and sweet.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Anyone else out there?
I don't see.
Now, I have a question. The referendum, Jen, it's you put it on ballot, obviously. Is this a yes or no? Is that how it's?
Yeah, so the actual wording of the referendum is in the local law.
Okay.
It says, shall local law 2021 dash, whatever number this will be,
Mhm.
entitled a local law increasing the term of office of town highway superintendent from 2 years to 4 years be approved. That is what the that's what it will read on the ballot.
If we don't have any others,
Motion to
motion
close.
to close.
Second.
All right, all in favor? Opposed?
I always feel so strange when we don't recap like a little for anyone else exactly what we're
We're
doing.
gonna have to do the same thing again,
Yeah,
basically.
we'll be doing it again.
Okay.
I just love when we all like frantically raise our hands. Like we don't have, like Elaine mentioned, we don't have to raise our hands anymore.
I'm strongly in favor of it.
It's a good visual cue.
But it is funny, we're all like, our hands.
You're right, you know, it's, I had to look at the boxes, you know. Yeah, right.
You're right.
It was like, "Lynn, you
But
said-"
where all our hands go at the same time.
Yeah, right. Very good. All right, so with that,
And I made the change that Sarah asked me to make,
okay.
changed effective to effective when it comes to.
Good catch.
Oh my gosh.
So you don't have to do the unlisted or negative or anything like that, so we just need to vote on this if you're prepared to at this time.
Yeah.
Mr. Supervisor, I'd be happy to make the motion for the resolution to go out for public referendum to extend the highway superintendent position from 2 to a 4-year term.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And carried. You can still raise your hand.
I can't help myself. I can't help myself. It's happening.
Excellent,
So
very good.
so the local laws passed.
Yes.
Who is going to provide this to the Board of Elections?
I will.
Oh, okay, so you'll take that responsibility?
Yep.
John?
Thank you,
Okay.
Jan.
And this does not get filed with the Secretary of State until after the November election. If it's approved, then it would get filed within 20 days.
And it just needs to be a simple majority.
Yep.
Cool.
And again, for clarification, that would, I know you don't have an opponent, but that would extend him for 4 years
Yep.
for the next time.
Starting January 1st.
Starting January.
2020.
So when people vote for Rob, right, in that November election, so they're voting for Rob and they're voting for the referendum.
Yeah, so it's an interesting question, and because Rob is literally running for a 2-year term, right?
Right. But the
So
law's going to change in the same day.
when the people make a decision that it's going to be a 4-year term, he gets the benefit of that 4 years because we're making this effective January 1st, 2020.
Okay, very good. So we'll move on to the next local law here, which is terms of the town clerk going from 2 to 4 years. And you all have that in front of you. And again, I'll need a motion to
Waive reading.
waive the reading. Yes.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed and carried. What Tim said with the highway is the same for the town clerk. Is that okay, Tim?
Yeah, by all means.
Yeah, all right. So we need a motion to open up the public hearing.
Do we have to waive the reading?
We just did.
I just
I'll
want to
make
know
a
that.
It's a
motion to
medication there.
open the public hearing.
Okay,
I'll second.
second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed and carried. And again, once again, if there's anyone that would like to comment here or on Facebook or however they're doing this, you're more than welcome to speak up at this time.
Is Mike's hand up anew?
Yeah, right.
Or is it
Hey,
old?
Where's Mike?
Well,
Is that
I
my-
absolutely recommend that we move this to a 4-year term too. We have an outstanding town clerk right now and she needs to be, the term needs to be extended to 4 years.
Very good. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
It's called consistency. So, anyone else?
I would just say that since we first started discussing this as a possibility, it's sort of almost the opposite of the movement for term limits, right? In some ways, because
Yeah, right.
something that I've learned in this process of conserving is that these particular roles are very well suited to professional staff. And the project arcs and the responsibility, the budgets really that they're planning are better suited to this longer time arc, this longer term versus the 2 years of starting and stopping. I think it makes in addition to having wonderful people actually filling the roles right now,
Right.
even if they weren't the ones, I think that it gives the town an advantage and the people of the town an advantage to see projects through, but also have the management capability and the relationships, all these things that come with with a longer term. And we know there's a precedent for it across the county and across the state.
Yeah, and I would repeat what I said the last time when Allison went out and actually did a survey with all the towns, 19 towns, and I believe 11 of them had both at 4 years.
Yeah.
There were a couple that split or two, but I think that says a lot.
And I think it reflects the technology that these positions now require, and the extent of management. You know, these are,
Yeah.
you know, the town law put this in for 2-year terms a long time ago, and now it's such a more complicated process. And that, you know, you don't want turnover in a business, and turnover is good in government sometimes, but sometimes you really need to make sure you've got someone who can come up with a 4-year plan and execute on it. And then we can decide if it was a good 4-year plan.
Right.
Rather than getting halfway through it.
Yeah.
And then having to decide
Yeah.
if they did a good job.
Yeah, and who knows what the future holds, you know, and
Yes.
there's so many different variables that could happen down the road, it could reverse, you know,
Yeah.
so, but again, that is yet to be seen. So, did we come out of the public?
Well, you still got hand up and I can't
Oh, we have another
tell if
hand.
it went back up or if
I think it's been.
it's been up, okay.
I think
I will,
it's-
I will lower
Is
it,
that Mike?
and
It's Michael.
Oh, okay,
if he raises it again, we'll know.
I don't think we've come out.
we haven't come up yet.
No, I'll make a motion to come out of it.
And I'll second.
Second that, all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed and carried. Okay, so,
John, do you want to make this motion?
Oh, wait, yes. So, Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion to pass the proposed local law modification of 2-year term for town clerk to a 4-year term.
And I'll second.
all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed and carried, very good. Thank you, board. It's a big change here.
Yeah, that's a big
Been
one.
under discussion.
Yeah, it is. That's true.
We should make sure that we're doing as much as we can to inform the public on what's going to be coming up, because I don't think that we really have things like this on the ballot terribly
I was
often.
gonna say,
Yeah.
that's something I want to talk to you about and see how much, because like,
Oh, you mean as far
if
as,
we're allowed to, is like
Market
the
it,
town
you
allowed to
mean?
electioneer on
We
a.
don't necessarily, clearly we're in support of it, right? Like we passed the law, but just to say, make
I
sure,
would argue-
is it on the back of the ballot? Make sure you flip your ballot over.
Yeah, I think that's.
And
the kind of
exercise
stuff
your
that
right
I
to
don't
vote.
think we want to electioneer about pass it, but
No, no, no.
explaining the
Yeah.
process to folks, which I'll
Yeah.
check. Do you have any sense of where the
Like, is
limits
it gonna
are
be on the
that?
back or at the
It's on the
bottom?
back.
It'll be.
Sit the ballot.
I don't know where it will be placed actually on the ballot.
It'll be on the back.
It will.
John is confident it will be on the
I
back.
know, usually they are, that's why.
Yeah.
You gotta remember, flip it over.
Yeah, exactly.
We
Yeah.
should, I mean, we should talk to the elections and
Correct.
make sure that they're telling
We'll have
everyone.
time for that agriculture.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We're early enough in the process.
Yeah,
We're gonna make,
exactly.
we're gonna make the cycle and we should be in touch with the Board of Elections to make sure.
When I send over
Yeah.
the language, I'll ask.
That's an excellent question as to how much really, we want to provide information to the public to let them know that this will be on the ballot.
Yeah.
And the normal avenues of public relations, which you're much better at than I am.
And the
It'll be
people who are
available to you.
campaigning will be able to choose to share it too. It's a great opportunity for if there's bipartisan support for both, for people to use, you know, the efforts that they're making to get out to the community to share what's on the ballot in addition to their own
And
candidates.
this is one of those things where if we don't do a good job of explaining to people what's on the back of the ballot, sadly, it will be far fewer votes on the referendum than everything else.
Yeah,
Which means just because people weren't informed, they will essentially have their vote taken away from them because they don't know to turn over their ballot or they don't know what it was. And maybe if it gets too complicated to weigh in on.
yeah, we should provide information on the website about like what it is and what they're deciding and kind of the background of it.
Yeah.
But we can talk about that more.
sure, yeah, that sounds good, I think it all, and as Tim said, we're way ahead of the ballgame here, so that helps. Very good, so, now we'll move on to item 8, which is the, again, commercial solar farms and, the town of Manlius and pilot agreements, partnering with OSIDA, which I think all of you have been to these meetings now, right?
Yes,
And,
or have been briefed.
yes, and they certainly help uncomplicate the complicated. you know.
So I think we should start off by explaining the acronyms here. A pilot is payment in lieu of taxes, for those who aren't familiar. And OSIDA is the Onondaga County Industrial Development Agency. So that's what we're
Right.
talking about here.
Mhm.
And So
So you're taking this one, I think.
I'll kick it off, but this is really, I mean, this is really, I think, for a lot of the board, because
Okay,
we're talking about some things that are pretty complex,
Yeah.
and we had to really learn what the process is for a pilot agreement to come to the town. What does that mean for solar? Because it's really, really different for a community solar array than it would be for any other type of development project. So a few of us met with OSIDA, and I was able to get Tim on the phone for the 12th time that day. And
and our
Allison,
assessor as well. which
Allison,
is
Allison
very
joined our
helpful.
Pat came down the line.
and
Yes.
Pat, our
Yes.
assessor, was there.
Yeah.
And I was joined by my colleagues, Councilors Waters and Denton. And it was really a productive meeting. We met with the folks from OSIDA, and they helped us to understand the process that they go through in vetting these projects. So as many of you might recall, or perhaps you're unaware, the town opted back into the property tax exemption for solar early in 2020. And that helps to foster solar development for small commercial and residential solar projects. And it had one of the effects that it also has is how large scale commercial solar projects are developed and how those projects are taxed. And so what OSIDA recommended that we do is that we send any pilot request to OSIDA for them to vet it. And I know that they spoke with you. This is
Oh, yeah.
not for
No.
your benefit, but
But that's okay.
even as I'm talking to you.
I'm with
Otherwise, I'm like turning around all the time.
you.
You'll be my audience for the time being.
Always
And
look at the camera.
just
Yeah.
stare at the
There you
owl.
go, right?
What do you want?
Yes, you can do that.
You're
I
doing,
could do that.
you're fine. Yeah.
I'll start panning the room. But OSIDA recommended that we send the projects to them. So why these projects are being developed is, as I mentioned earlier, due to the tax equity packages. Like the people who own these companies, to this gentleman's point earlier, they're not necessarily in this because they're passionate environmentalists. You know, they're developing these projects because there is a pretty significant return on investment for the people who are behind the scenes. And to Mary's point when she spoke, I don't think that I have any publicly traded companies that would be involved in any of these types of projects, as I am a financial advisor during the day. But the quandary and what makes it so complicated is that they're really after the pilot agreements more than they're after the land or it's not about the solar panels, it's about the equity that they can get, the tax equity package.
Right.
So they need that pilot for these projects to work. And the reason why no ground has been broken is because that is the arc, that is the development arc that takes so much time.
Yeah.
So these projects aren't getting pushed through. They're going through a very rigorous vetting process through National Grid or NYSEG, depending on which utility zone they're in, through the DEC, NYSERDA. There's all sorts of rules and regulations that they have to meet. And most of these projects will fail. You have to be near three-phase power. It can't be on a wetland of any kind. A lot of these properties, they're coming and saying, oh, well, we'll mitigate the wetlands. They're not interested in the state is not interested in putting community solar or large-scale commercial solar projects in these types of areas. So it's not, those projects will not be approved. So what is so interesting about OSIDA in the meeting and the opportunity that we were presented with when we met with them is that to get the pilot agreement, if we choose to go through OSIDA, which we'll decide on, or at least start that conversation tonight. If we were to move forward with them, before they'll even bring the pilot agreement to their board, because they have to present it to a board as well, their own board, they have to go through a process where every single component is properly vetted. And it's so rigorous, and we'd be happy to share that, the full checklist with everyone if you're interested in seeing it. But the project cannot move forward without the town support, the school district support, and the county support. And so if we don't give the support, they don't get the pilot, there's no project. And so it does feel kind of like a wild west of solar. I know there's a lot of people are concerned that these projects, it looks like they're getting just kind of a rubber stamp, or it might appear that way. That's not the case at all. If they get initial approval from the planning board with the site plan review, that does not mean the project's going to be built. they need to have a site plan review to even go to the utility, to even start looking to see if it's possible. And then before they can build the project, they'd have to come full circle back to the town. We'd have to approve it again, because we'd have to approve the terms of the pilot agreement, the
Right.
payment in lieu of taxes.
May I interject two
Please.
things?
Yeah.
Something that also became very clear to us is that what happened in Clay is something that if we were not on the ball, could happen to us.
That's right.
When we are presented and given formal notice that a project is seeking a pilot, we need to respond to them within 60 days. Or, as it stands now, they could possibly receive the default sort of agreement, which would be 15 years completely tax-free. We know that, and it's a risk. But the reality is that 15 years is not ideal for nearly every project, because they're looking to secure between 20 and 30 years of a guarantee. And the brokers of these projects are looking to create the best package possible. So that's one thing that sort of helps avoid that situation. The other thing is that we are instituting a process to make sure that we are going to be, we're discussing what we'll do after we receive notice. And it makes sense to me to say that we would recommend that projects go right to OSIDA.
So we could set that, if we did what OSIDA's recommended, we would pass a resolution making it abundantly clear what it is what we are going to be doing with all of the stakeholders in our community, which would include the school districts and the county, because we're the tax levying.
Yeah.
Wait, no, that's wrong. We just,
That's right.
no, that's right.
Not lien levy.
Not lien levy, yeah. I was like, wait,
That was the word I was looking for.
yeah.
But Sarah made a great point when we were chatting about it. She said also the planning board's role here is so incredibly important. And at the end of the day, if we know there are these tools to sort of vet the project in this one way, the planning board's expertise lies in understanding quality of life issues and aesthetics.
Yeah.
And there's no way we're erasing that important role or part.
Yeah, that
And if the
role.
planning board needs support for the project management that is extremely complex, OSIDA is providing that. And they can focus on what is in front of them and what they're very capable of doing.
So if there's concern and there's requests for a moratorium, to me, when I'm hearing those folks, I'm hearing the people here this evening that brought that to our attention. And the chair of the planning board is in favor of not having a moratorium, of continuing to come up with a process to adequately vet these solar projects. And I think what I'm hearing when I hear do a moratorium, we need the comprehensive plan. Comprehensive plan isn't very well suited for this type of work. Like and Heather can possibly speak better in more detail to that. But what I think that what I believe is that OSIDA has presented us with the solution that the moratorium, if we didn't have OSIDA, then I think we would need to be talking about a moratorium to really figure this out, because it's a lot. I'm not a large scale commercial solar developer. I never was. And OSIDA's really presented the
I think that's an
solution.
excellent point, because when OSIDA came to us and they gave us the presentation, of course, I'm sort of a bottom line guy, so I said, what are you getting out of this? And they showed us. They showed what how they're going to get a split of the cost, and yet still the town under the pilot agreement is still fairly whole, I guess you could say that.
Yeah.
And the fact is that
And better
we
able to
don't
negotiate the higher rate.
have to administer it here in town,
Right.
which would be very costly and timely, especially for a town manager to do that. So I think that what they presented to us was very, very strong. And I like your point too, that it's not a slam dunk with these solar projects. There's an awful lot to go through. I know that, Rich Rossetti did from the planning board, he did request, and we think we all got that. And we spoke a little bit, and I said, well, we're gonna be discussing it tonight. And I know Joe he was more open about it,
And I think it was worth a discussion. It was certainly worth looking at.
Absolutely, yeah.
We don't want the planning board to feel uncomfortable,
No,
or
not
to feel unprepared
But
to be dealing with
to
it.
tie it in with the comprehensive plan, which
Well, yeah, I think the comprehensive plan has to look at, I mean, I think that Dave said it really well. We've got a lot going on, particularly in one area of the town.
We do have a hot zone.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think that we're in a good position. We have basic things we need to do for the comprehensive plan, which is truly about thinking about land use. And so it has to work in parallel, I believe, to be able to say, all right, what are the big long-term unanswered questions that we need to make a framework for thinking about now at this moment, and not, and it really, that's what the comprehensive plan is about. It's not, and then after we're done developing the plan, of course, then it's about implementing that framework and those guidelines.
And I think that provides guidance to developers that if the comprehensive plan articulates some objectives, and then they could say, oh, a solar farm would fit in this area, but maybe not so much in that area, and
Right.
they would be able to make a good judgment. The other thing I just wanted to share is that there is a solar study group.
Yep.
The planning
Thank you.
board asked for some professional assistance because of all of these applications. And there is a study group. We have been getting in some outside experts. Another expert is scheduled to speak at the planning board, and the study group is planning to meet again next week. So there are additional processes going on to address your concern that we should be smarter than the developers, that we're trying to get there. And so that we know the right questions to ask, and we're not bamboozled by somebody who's very charming, but has some sort of a bad deal, so.
In 2015, I worked at the Central New York Regional Planning and Development Board, and my background in solar came from running a community-based initiative to help people go solar. It's called Solar ICNY, and I ran the project for 2 years, just short of 2 years. And when I was working there, that was when community solar, that's CDG, community distributed generation, and distributed generation were expanded, and NYSERDA of New York State Regional, New York State Research and Development Authority, I missed the letter in there, but Energy Research and Development Authority, they allowed it, and the utilities allowed it, and developers came from all over the country, descended on New York. They were submitting proposals to New York State with people's property without their permission or knowledge.
Wow.
They were submitting them into the queue to get evaluated for community solar. And we had residents from around the 5-county region, really from around the state, who knew we did solar at the planning board, calling us saying, I have this really great contract with this solar company. And everyone thinks that because it's solar, that they're good people. And these were predatory companies taking advantage of farmers. And I bet quite a few of them signed those contracts that were very disadvantageous to the landowners. So these, just because they're selling solar or developing a solar field does not mean anything. It doesn't.
And I had a couple of questions for you, Tim. On the partnership, that's the first question. Obviously, there's an agreement that we would have to partnership with those sites, that we would partner.
Should we
with them.
mention the August meeting?
August meet?
Yeah, I don't think it's ready, we're not there yet.
Okay.
We're working on it.
Okay.
Right?
So,
The other tax levying organizations.
oh,
to
correct,
coordinate.
yes, I forgot about that, thank you. Yeah, so we still need to meet with them. The other thing too, on the, are you familiar if there's any permits yet that have been given?
Building permits?
Yeah, for,
I don't think any building permits.
Awesome. You know this. Could you give us an update on what you know, exactly where everything is in the process, the 2, the 5, and the 2?
Are you talking
Or was it
about-
Lisa what Lisa updated us on?
Oh, all the different solar
I
projects
mean,
that we have currently going
Yeah.
on. None of those projects have been.
so this is primarily, yeah, Karen.
No, so the answer is no.
Kaylin, hold on, we gotta,
Yeah, I just want to say, I've received a number of phone calls recently on the solar requests and concerns about what's happening in the town. We certainly have heard from residents tonight about putting a moratorium on the solar projects. I don't have any reason not to support a moratorium. I mean, just listening to the conversations tonight, we'll have an answer by August, maybe by this, we don't have the answers to this, permitting. I just think there's so many questions out there. And if we send a message out to these companies that look at, right now, we can't approach, the town of Manlius, as we can't approach the town of Casanova. But I think we owe it to our residents to get this well under our belt, and, I would support a moratorium. I
So.
feel strongly about
what do we
it.
have?
The email
Yep.
from Mr. Rossetti and, you know, his concerns.
Yep.
He's been embedded with planning and development for years. Mr. Morocco is a developer. I've been watching and listening to all other towns and counties around the area. And, you know, what's the rush?
Well, I guess my question too, Karen,
I would support it.
those are good points, I guess. With that, if we did agree on a moratorium, I mean, that just means the projects right now that are in front of the planning board stop. Is that what it is? Yeah. And so we have what, 7?
There's only 2.
Interested
Can we get that
people?
update from Allison?
2 actually.
Would that be all right?
What do we have?
Yeah, I don't have the spreadsheet in front of me, but I did go through, Lisa provided a list of all the current, solar all the way back to, I think it's 2015 or 2017. Nothing is at the building permit phase.
Right. Okay.
And there are 2 that have not yet been approved, for a special permit.
Oh, they've got a public hearing.
There you go. I have
Monday night.
Oh, thank you, Jack.
We've also made, and I apologize, because I was actually gonna pull this up on the screen, but our Wi-Fi is failing us, so I can't do that.
Okay.
No, we did, and we just caught you by surprise, so thank you
No,
very
that
much.
was my intention, but I couldn't do it. So, we have received 2 letters in terms of the pilot agreements. We have received 2 letters, from 2 developers putting us on notice, if you will, like that was discussed in town play. We have responded to both of those letters, our town assessor has, and indicated to them that we do want a pilot agreement, and also indicated that we want to engage with OSINT. There's one that was approved on Collimer Road, and I have to do a little more research on it, but I believe there was a condition set on it that if it wasn't constructed within a certain period of time,
Yeah.
that the special permit would expire, and that has since
I
expired.
think, yeah, that's right.
But we have to confirm that. So, and then the others, everyone is well aware of,
And
what.
oh, I was gonna say, the others also have conditions, so if they don't get a building permit within, I think some of them vary, but it's 1 to 2 years. Or if they're not completed in 2 or 3 years, then again, those special permits are expired, so the planning board is doing.
The planning board still, at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think it's important to show the respect to the planning board has done an
They're
excellent
doing a good
job.
job.
with
They're
it.
doing a very good job of it. And something you mentioned, Sarah, that I thought was important, and speaks to the word pastoral. We do have rich soil. We do have agricultural land that perhaps we need to look at in the terms of comprehensive planning, maybe better suited to be an opportunity for other things, including agricultural purposes. So that is not lost on us either. So I really take seriously the nervousness that comes. And if I were next to a bit of land that was looking at one of these giant projects, I'm sure I'd feel similarly. So I also think that the reason that we look at this is because the benefit also to the community at large is quite significant in terms of tax revenue. It is millions and millions of dollars that would go to the thing in terms of quality of life that other folks talk about as well, which is the cost of what our
And
taxes
the
are.
residents who subscribe all save money on their electric.
Right, residents who subscribe, right, who have reduced energy costs, lower taxes, and ostensibly not a giant building or track housing or anything else. I mean, this is the other thing, you think
So-
about.
But what would happen to your property values if a solar farm is built within a few miles of?
It depends on the visibility. It absolutely depends on the visibility.
Yeah, I know there was a lot of discussion over on Eagle in Townsend to make sure that they were not visible in the farmland. I think 2 houses.
And they
Only
planted
one.
trees.
The one on Salt Springs, that's a different story. I mean, that's like right out there.
Right, right.
So, I mean, but again, that's the planning board doing their job.
So the planning board will address those things. If it
Yeah.
doesn't fit in with the standards, then they will say no.
Right.
So everyone who's here who doesn't want that, go tell the planning board and they'll say no.
And that's.
Where exactly is this set of standards?
Where is the
located
planning board
project
set of
location?
standards?
Where is that all described
Section
and
one
laid out? for you?
5527.2 of the town law, of our law.
What?
Section 155.27.2
Is that Wi-Fi working?
is the section that deals with solar
If you go to our,
photovoltaic
Yeah.
energy
if
systems.
you go to our town code online, search solar, it'll come right up.
So may I ask you a question?
Sure.
What is the nature of a moratorium and what would be the process of the town doing?
So if the town wanted to implement a moratorium, you do it by local law. So you would have to introduce a local law, hold a public hearing like we normally would on a local law. And usually moratoriums are anywhere between 6 months to a year. Courts don't like to see them for longer than a year unless it's paired with some type of comprehensive plan process that is underway and actually moving forward, and there is some end in sight. I've seen courts approve them up to a year and a half, maybe 2 years, but that's rare. It's usually, they don't like to see them for more than a year. And the moratorium has to be related to a specific issue or problem that you're trying to address. The fact that we're getting as many solar farm applications as we are, I think is sufficient to justify that type of thing. The other question is, and this is a little less clear from a legal standpoint, is to what extent can you stop or to not stop, but to postpone, put a pause, I guess is the right word to use, to pause a solar development. If it's already gotten planning board approval or town board approval for special permit, which some of them have.
Yeah.
And we have, by the way, approved 2 pilots for smaller solar farms. One on Taft and one on Green Lakes. The fact that building permits have not been issued, I have seen moratoriums which say, as long as a building permit hasn't been issued, we can even put a moratorium on that, even though there's been approvals. So this board would have to kind of decide which way they want to go with that specific issue. If it's already been approved.
And I would say, so I guess I would ask that we consider drafting that local law and having some conversation about those little detail-y things, because I think the planning board has put restrictions already on those developers. And I wouldn't want to do something that was in opposition to the restrictions that have already been placed.
Okay, so the restrictions that the planning board would put on would be restrictions related to approvals of a site plan or a special permit. Because the planning board has
But they
to-
also had the timeframes in there.
Which would be conditions of approvals for the special permit or for the site plan. Those are land use issues. Those are things that they're supposed to be dealing with on a day-to-day basis. This is what the planning board is for. The issue of pausing things would be the responsibility of the town board, and trying to figure out what might make sense. In the town of Manlius, solar farms, I'm using that word, I'm using that term just because everybody kind of understands. It's not the one solar panel on your property or on your house. It is a
Large scale.
40 acre farm.
Industrial.
Yeah, so, or more. 5 megawatts or less. Those type of projects are only allowed in the industrial district and in the resident restricted agricultural district. They're not allowed in R1, R2, and R2. They're only allowed in areas where we have large tracts of property.
And so we had some developers come to us and ask for a zone change.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and but of course, the zone changes up to the discretion of this board and only this board. And you can choose to give a zone change, you don't have to. But if you are interested in considering moratorium, a local law would have to be drafted, and if he's asking to do that, I will do that.
I think there needs to be a process in place, and I think it needs to be make sure that we are hearing the planning board's concerns. But I don't think a moratorium is going to do anything except push it down the road. So if we could just do more of a solar study, because again, these projects already have so many regulations on them. Many of them don't even, I mean, again, we have
Seven,
total.
4 approved.
right.
None of them have been built. So there isn't, there's no solar farms in the town of Manlius.
Right.
And that all, and I think Caitlin could answer this question better than me, but that has to do with things like making sure an interconnect agreement is in place, which it's my understanding that no interconnect agreements have been approved by the utility companies.
Yeah, they're
for any
in
of
the
these
county,
projects.
there are only a couple, right?
Yeah, there are not, I don't know that any have been approved. I certainly haven't heard of any being approved.
The other thing is, does Madison County have an OSIDA equivalent and the process, I wonder? I'm
Sure.
curious to know.
Yes.
Because if they don't, it would also make a lot of sense that Casnovia would put the moratorium in place.
So
I haven't talked to them, I have no idea.
let me,
Okay.
let me
Yeah, that-
try
I
to
was curious about
explain
that as well.
OSIDA pilots versus town of Manlius pilots, okay? Because right now, under the law, solar farms, large solar farms, by the state of New York, by policy of the state of New York, which has a very strong policy of encouraging renewable energy. I think it's by 2035, we're gonna have over 70% of our energy coming from solar pursuant to state government. So that is the policy of the state of New York, is to encourage renewable energy. Therefore, they have said, you are tax exempt. You do not have to pay taxes for 15 years if you build a solar farm. The town can require you to enter into a pilot agreement for 15 years. And no, not for more, but for 15 years. Let me get to that. That's part of the issue. So we have entered into 2 pilots for 15 years with smaller solar farms in the town of Manlius. Aside from, if we said we don't want to allow this exemption to take place, and we passed a law that said we don't want this exemption to take place, I believe that the County Industrial Development Agency, notwithstanding us saying that, can still put a pilot in place for solar farms, because I think there's a specific exemption that allows them to support solar farm renewable energy and to give a pilot, notwithstanding what the town does or doesn't do.
As can the school districts.
As can the school. But again, it's OSIDA who has the authority as an economic development agency to offer tax breaks, not only for town, but for school taxes and for county taxes and for village taxes if it's in the village. So that's a separate and distinct entity that can do that aside from the town.
They might call it tax planning versus tax breaks.
Well,
They might say that they're making it a better deal because it's more predictable.
I grew up in economic development. I was a director for Empire State Development, so I understand the concepts.
Yeah.
And OSIDA, that's what it does, is it? And because the state has determined that this is a strong policy of the state for renewable energy,
I mean, this is.
They want to incentivize it.
they want to incentivize it. So even though we have given 15-year pilots, I think you're right. I think the developers of these projects want longer pilots, and that's why they will go to OSIDA. Frankly, OSIDA is much more experienced in negotiating pilots than we would be. And I think it's a good idea to use OSIDA as entity to do it. By the way, they charge a fee for that, and that fee will ultimately be used for economic development projects throughout.
Tim, I have a question, sort of
Does that answer your question, though, in terms of?
Yeah. Is there a possibility, we have 7 that are on the board, let's say, okay? And they're being worked on, I mean, they're with the planning board, they have a planning
Well,
board.
there's only two in the, two in the.
Only
Two
two in
Well,
any
that
sort of
are in front
pipeline.
of the, in front of the plan.
So I guess my question is there a possibility that this grandfather, say, say we talked about putting a resolution together for a moratorium as a possibility, but those that are already in front of the planning board, that we don't put a moratorium on them, or is it?
You can make the moratorium say whatever you want it to say. I don't know that that would make a lot of sense, but yeah, you can say, we're putting a moratorium on everything. But we will allow you to come to the town board and make an argument to us to vary the moratorium in a specific case, because this project is fully screened, no one will see it, and
What's a moratorium if there's an exception?
yes, you can vary the moratorium, you can make a process.
I mean, I would argue that that's what the planning
The
board's
planning board-
responsibility is. I mean, like, we have 7 cherished community members who have been doing this for years.
Yeah.
Who we've trusted with every other development. You know, I feel when something is unknown and possibly scary and represents risk, we have an opportunity to take it head on and learn and become experts in how to verify these projects, how we figure out where they fit in the town. And our planning board, it has expertise in figuring that out. So we have taken the project management off of their table with partnering with OSIDA. We've done everything we can to make sure all the official things are taken care of. And as with every other commercial business, anything, we say, hey, planning board, can you make sure this fits the quality of the neighborhood? It matches our, you know, what we think of as Manlius standards. And I trust them. I trust them quite a bit.
Yeah.
And they will have public hearings on all these
Yeah,
things.
just want to hear from people.
Yeah, there's a process in place for people to say, we really don't want this, and it's up to the planning board to decide whether or not that is worth considering.
We had an apartment complex proposed, and this was a little bit different because it was a zone change request, so it came to us. And the neighbors from that community filled this room, and they said, we don't want this here.
And I see church's community room.
Yeah, we had to move it. This was all pre-pandemic, so we had,
Well-
everyone went to IC Church, and when it was made so abundantly clear, the developer actually pulled the proposal, but I don't think that we would have been moving forward with an approval when the neighbors didn't want it there. Like, this isn't lost on us, and it's not lost on the planning board.
And that hearing was the planning board.
So let me
Yes.
get some coordination here with, we were initially starting about partnerships being with OSIDA, okay?
Right.
And we're also talking about a moratorium. I think that we would welcome the partnership with OSIDA. We still have additional meetings to discuss that. I think with the moratorium, I think we need more input from all of us on a separate occasion, not tonight.
Yeah, I don't think we need to.
Because we've covered a lot. Tim has given us a lot of education as far as how these moratoriums work. And we need to discuss and communicate with Tim our thought process on the moratorium. And whether or not we want to look at a local law to have a public hearing. And what restrictions or what limits we want to put on this possible moratorium if we're going to do it.
I would also like to get the input from the planning board members.
And the planning board, absolutely. Yeah. So,
Continue with that.
Yeah.
We had, Tim, didn't we have a moratorium on fracking in the town?
And what?
Fracking. Didn't we issue a moratorium?
I know
New York State
fracking
did,
was
yeah.
discussed.
Yeah, but no, I thought we,
Before New York State implemented, it's more, the town considered it, I don't recall if we ever actually.
The reason we did it was because we're all limestone here. It wasn't-
no, we were concerned because, again, the neighboring
Yeah, Pompey, you can do it and
And,
they could go under.
they would be using our roads.
Yeah.
And, we did the inventory.
Right, that was, wow, that's a while ago too. Yeah, that's sort of
That wasn't that long.
disappeared 10 years ago. We were just-
Anyway, I think it was very effective.
Yeah.
And,
All right, well, again, if everyone's all right with that, I think we can share.
I don't, I think that if this board tonight, everybody believes, notwithstanding whether a moratorium goes into place or not, that OSIDA is the best entity to negotiate our pilots. I think you can make a
Oh, I'd like
resolution to
to, I'd
that.
like to do that.
I think that's.
So that way we have it on the record
Yes.
and we can provide it to applicants as they
Yeah,
come in. and-
Absolutely.
That'll
Like
even-
that part of the packet, but if you're going to do that, you also get a letter from us saying.
Yeah, that's primary.
which
We need to do
I
that.
feel like doing that is gonna, I mean, in many ways, it'll function as a moratorium because we're gonna say, here are all the things you need to consider before you even come to us.
I agree, yeah. All right, so let's,
So a motion, somebody wanted to make a motion
Yeah.
to make OSIDA the entity on behalf of the town of Manlius to negotiate any pilots for projects that are approved or that are being considered under the solar voltaic law.
Can I just say so moved?
I'd like to make that motion.
I'd like to make that motion.
I'd like to second that.
all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, carried.
Mr.
Yes.
Supervisor, could we make the resolution for a moratorium at the same time?
Well,
no, it's a
That would have to be a local law. So a local law would actually have to be drafted and before the board, before we
We
could.
need to do a whole public hearing. It needs to be
Yes.
posted.
But I think what you're saying is you want to take just 2 weeks to write the local
Yeah,
law.
yeah, right, I would like
Then we
us
vote on
to,
it
some
next time.
input on it to see if, what kind of body it would have.
During the course of the next couple of weeks, I'll be looking for anybody who wants to give me input on this issue.
Well,
And,
let's look at Kevin Oviatt to start.
I'm gonna be, I know the
Yeah.
call there, I'll be
Yeah.
talking to him, so. All right,
So this was to make OSIDA our partner. on
Yes.
pilots.
Yep. yeah, so we've made the motion and all approved, okay,
Yeah.
so we
So
can now
Heather,
move
were you
on.
the second on that?
I
Yeah.
was a second,
I
yes,
was-
thank you.
Okay, so, all right.
Thank you.
So now, item 9.
Did we vote on
Yeah. I think you were talking with your hand on it. So,
We don't need a motion or to invite Tim to do it.
no, he just gonna start with that. Yep. So, yep. So we'll talk about the rules of decorum, which are next. Item 9. Allison, thank you for working on this with everyone. And it's just so different now with virtuals, the hybrid, as you say, John. But I like a lot of the clarifications of additional points that you put in here that we never would have had to use before. So, and unless anyone has any,
I have one
comment on
sort of
this? Yeah.
technical point, is
Yep.
having done a number of Zoom meetings with a lot of people, people don't know how to write their name, and so a little addition on the instructions of how to join Zoom
Yeah.
and how to make your name, because I think a lot of people don't know how to do that, that's why they don't do it.
As I created this, I tried to do 2 things. I tried to mirror what we had for in-person, because that was something I heard a lot from the board.
Right.
They wanted that to like that, but then I also tried to find examples in other municipalities, and there were a lot.
So you're the pioneer, thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
these rules of decorum are. All right, so other than that, Sarah.
Yeah, so it doesn't have to be in the.
Right, but I think
Just
you're
as a
right.
guideline for us to explain that to people.
So unless anyone has any further comment on this, we've all read it inside and out.
So I would, Mr. Supervisor, I would
Yes.
make a motion to approve the revised rules of decorum.
Okay, that's the proposal 6-9, okay. All in favor? Opposed? Carried, very good. One more to pack away here, you know.
I keep doing the check marks, it's very exciting.
Well, I've got about 5 rules of decorums that I've done over the last 11 years or so. So, all right, now we'll move on to the lease agreement between the Village of Manlius and the Town of Manlius, which you all have, and of course, this is for the police department, police station, And I've had a chance to let my first concern was because I all of a sudden, oh, we got the lease agreement, And I don't know if you had a chance to look, but I would like to say that the Village of Manlius has been very fair with this agreement. We try to negotiate 6 months. 6 months in the year, which is right after they, pass their budget. And we actually met one before that because there was a lot of work that had to be done at the police station, which the training room, I'll tell you though, Chief, it was very cool for the first time when I walked in there. It was really nice that the AC was working there. And, and they were very understanding with our lease last year and cut us some slack on that. And that to finish up 2021 at 2% and then move on to 1.5%, which has always been a negotiated amount, I think is very fair, so I hope that it's under 100. So Elaine,
I just have two questions.
Yes.
So you mentioned that their budget is
Yeah,
different than ours. Is that why the date is, so it goes in effect in January this year, but we just got it now? That's why.
Yes, yeah,
That was my one
it's
question.
always tricky because of our calendar and our
Calendar,
fiscal,
And then my second question was just, has there, like, I know the amount is a little different, but is there any other different changes than before?
I didn't
I
notice.
reviewed it too.
Yeah, it looked-
Chief, did you have?
It was all the same.
I didn't see it.
Oh.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't see anything in here that was changed. Liability, everything was the same there.
It's pretty
Case of
straightforward.
fire,
Yeah,
yeah,
it looked pretty
pretty
straightforward. I
standard.
looked back through the notes, it looked like it basically remains the same each time, and I just wanted to confirm.
right, yeah. So, it looked, it looks to me like it's, up to par. And I, like I said, I feel very comfortable with this over the years negotiating
Yeah.
with the village, So, so if anyone has any other questions.
I just say.
Yeah.
Chief, are you totally back to non-construction phase at the moment?
Yes and no. Some areas still look somewhat incomplete, and we're still kind of struggling with various units sort of reading one another. I don't think we have the capability of doing that, so it works.
Yeah.
Which is better than nothing that you had before.
Correct.
It's a lot better than what it was.
I heard that in the police
Yeah.
meeting that you'd met, the police committee meeting that you'd mentioned that there were sort of these pockets of the HVAC that's just not necessarily
Yeah.
flowing yet.
I don't know much about those systems, but when I asked the one gentleman that was there, I said, how come when you walk from one end of the building to the other, you experience 4 different temperatures?
Yeah, all different seasons.
Yeah, and he said 2 things. One, the systems don't communicate with one another, so there's no thermostat that regulates the entire building.
Right.
Each section is controlled by a separate individual thermostat.
Right.
So it could be because all thermostats are.
Set at different numbers.
Yeah.
Was the age of the building challenging too, I think, because of the structure? Its layout?
No, I don't think so.
No.
They came in through the ceiling, so.
Okay.
Well, that would be something, that's really interesting, but it doesn't, is that one of the reasons, sort of the standard of quality, they're like, well, we put you through a lot and you didn't use, we put you through a lot, so 1.5 instead of 2%.
Well, and actually, like I said, they cut us a break quite a bit more than a quarter of last year because of how long they had gone on with the construction. So I'm pretty comfortable with that 1.5.
Yeah.
It was sort of like I said 1, they said 2, and so we agreed on 1.5.
I know that they probably feel, the village is probably glad that they have these tenants, but
Oh,
at
yeah.
the same time,
Yeah.
we understand that it's not a perfect situation.
Right.
Well, I'll be happy to make a motion,
Okay.
Mr. Supervisor, to
Yep.
enter into agreement with the village of Manlius for the lease between the village and the town. for the lease.
Okay,
And I'll second.
all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Very good, thank you. Karen or Heather, is this yours? We have the department summer staff for
Yes,
board
this is
approval.
a good sign. Compared to where we were last
Right.
year when Peggy was shutting everything down. So She has submitted 29 employees. We're always very fortunate to have great summer staff, many return. And she has submitted 29 names for approval. And I would like to make a motion that we accept the summer staff that Peggy has put.
Happy to second that.
Before we go,
Any-
actually,
Is there
And I
any
guess she's
discussion?
got
Go
one
ahead.
more that she'll be coming. She just had to,
Okay.
Oh, all right, okay.
nail it
John?
down.
are we back at like full capacity or are we still?
As far as the program.
Yeah,
Yeah,
great.
John, yeah.
Except for the musical, right?
Yeah.
Other than
Well,
that.
the musical
Yeah.
is not taking place,
Yeah.
only because at the time they needed to get things underway.
So no audition.
The programs just weren't open,
Yeah.
so, yeah, no, the applications are coming
Yeah.
in and there's a lot of
great.
excitement and swim programs.
Swim
Yeah,
softball.
I saw the Facebook post that we're looking for.
Yeah.
And it was great,
swimming.
Noah opened up Lewis Park for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
The other playground.
The
Yeah.
t-shirts are in, so
Okay, did we have a second? You did.
Heather.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, oh, Rob, you're up. Welcome back. I'm actually
Are you
also.
awake?
I'm here, guys.
I'm actually.
We'll see you in 4 years, Rob.
No, just wanted to mention to the board that, certainly the highway department is continuing with our paving process this year. And it's so far, knock on wood, it's gone pretty smoothly. So we'll continue on over the next couple of months. So it's going well.
Thank you for these posts that you're doing, the updates that are.
Yeah,
coming through
hopefully
your
that's helping. I want to thank
Great.
Allison for that too. And I know my secretary's been doing a great job of trying to keep those things going. And she keeps telling me, well, slow down, you gotta let me know ahead of time. I said, "Yeah, things are happening.
I will say, we do need some action shots. We need to let people, we gotta catch the.
Yeah.
You know,
crews
I
working
was
hard.
there
We're talking about
yesterday
highway
and
department.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Just cones.
Yeah.
I was there yesterday
Second.
and after getting a full tour, which I really genuinely enjoyed, I was telling my whole family about it when I got back yesterday evening. But I said they need a TikTok, like they
Oh
need
my God.
Oh,
videos. The trucks are so hip. It was so fun. It was very interesting.
I wanted to
and
do a time lapse photography thing of breaking down the snow plows. I thought it'd be so cool to see.
You know,
But
Rob,
it takes days.
I do have a question for you, though. You have a sort of an open time where the kids come by and you have hot dogs. Are you gonna do that? this year?
We did, obviously because of COVID, we didn't schedule anything for this year, but hopefully next year we'll get something back.
Okay, good, because that's always great for the kids to get up there and the equipment.
We've done that
Oh,
open
so
house
neat.
for quite some time, and that's basically union sponsored. The guys usually
Yeah.
kind of put that together, they volunteer their time.
Oh, good.
That's good.
So we're gonna try and put something together again next year.
You can have information about the licenses, class C licenses,
Yeah.
civil
Yeah.
All the
exams.
above. All the above.
Yeah.
Like the 6-year-olds, like we need you to be preparing. for
Well,
this.
see, that's the thing, is instead of just selling it to the 6-year-olds, we should go to all these high school seniors and be like, hey,
Yeah.
we have a great deal for you.
Do we have a deal for you?
Yeah, you're taking a gap year, why don't you think about this? The other thing is, the fire departments do that sort of the volunteer aspect of their recruitments, which are sad, so. But it does require a little more support probably than you have it, because you've been doing it, because everyone's like volunteer time, so.
Yeah, exactly. And then you throw
Something to
the
think
insurance stuff in there,
More
it could get the liability.
Yeah, I gotcha,
So-
that's scary.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rob. Very good.
Thank you.
Now, planning and development, I'd be happy to make a comment on this, since I've been signing a lot of permits. You know, and they have to change it from code enforcement officer.
But they are busy. aren't they?
Yes, they are. There are a lot coming across. So, Ellison, did you want to add anything? Because I know you're coordinating sort of back and forth with Lisa and that on planning.
Everything from high grass to permits to.
Yeah, Lisa's keeping me on my toes with these permits. That's all.
Poor
Planning and
Lisa.
development.
Yeah, kudos.
She should
Oh,
be
yes,
commended.
she's doing
She's
fine.
Absolutely.
pulling it all together.
Tim, you are.
I have nothing. We do have to go into executive session. I promise you to discuss a pending litigation matter.
Oh,
It will be very
It
short.
will not be 5
It
minutes.
will be fine. I promise you.
It will be fine.
We're gonna try
It
to.
will be 5 minutes.
I promise.
Young Kevin.
Good, good.
I'm not gonna talk at all.
It will not be long.
Don't make
It'll
promises.
be 3 minutes. It'll be 3 minutes. All right, Allison, what do you have?
I have nothing.
Nothing.
Period.
You've had enough going on over there.
I've been working with the chief.
And the chief is up.
Chief, did I see you the other day when I was driving around? Is that you in the truck? I waved at some cop and they were like waving like, I thought it
In the
was you.
truck?
Well,
That's probably Quill. That's the afternoon and then it was. Quill's in the
Just a
morning.
few things, that agreement that the town board, for our new civilian property room.
Oh.
We're finally prepared, he's gonna, I think, sign that next week.
Oh, okay.
So we'll have a new contracted civilian property room. So that's exciting.
Good.
We gave a job offer to a new front office person, the person that replaced Lynn Verbinski.
Yes.
Yeah.
A welcome addition to the front office because poor Jade has been working triple time in the front office, trying to answer phones and people in the lobby and all that. I also gave a conditional offer of employment to a new police position to fill our vacancy. That officer will start city academy. I was able to actually secure a seat at the city police academy, which starts on Monday.
Wow.
So that was really good. So we have to have people travel. And two officers in the Broome County Academy are doing very well. One
Good.
officer in the Oswego County Academy is doing well. And posted on the one that starts on.
How much longer are they in the academy, the other two?
They still have quite a ways.
Oh, they do.
The academy's like 3-4 months long.
Oh, I couldn't remember when they went in, you know, time's just flying, chief. All right, very good. And I see you have EAP you want to cover, or
Sure,
anything
just a
else?
couple of introductions, have the renewal for the employee assistance program with the ESI Employee Assistance Group.
Mhm.
This is the same group we have used actually since 2012. If you remember, one of the reasons that we use ESI is they have a public safety component to this. Not a lot of EAP programs have that component. We've been very happy with them. The increase from last year was only $147. So we would need approval for the supervisor to sign for 7/1/21 to 6/30/22.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Great program.
Carried, yeah, it is. Anything else, Ann?
Just that the American Rescue Plan
Oh,
Act, the American Rescue Plan Act, is $350 billion allegedly available to state and local governments.
Yeah.
We would qualify for that, but what we have to do is submit a request for denial for funds online. So whichever option the board chooses, I will go ahead and just secure whichever.
And that's for
option.
the funds in total,
That's
it's not
right.
like per project type. thing.
No, that's just, we don't, there's really not a lot of information
Yeah.
yet, but.
There was like no.
Yeah, in fact,
Okay,
So we
yeah.
have to do that. It's through New York State Division of Budget, so we have to
and I was,
request or decline.
yeah, and Ann, I received an email from our supervisors, President Association, Damian Yotowski, and actually Julie Rios is my president, and Sarah Brechtella
Mhm.
from the Association of Towns will be providing a presentation to us for allowable uses for the American Rescue Plan.
Is
And
there a
she's-
schedule for that?
Hmm?
Is she scheduled for that?
Yeah, we're doing this tomorrow at 2:00. So, and we're inviting the, you know, all the supervisors, basically. What I might do, I'll ask to see if I can shoot the WebEx.
Yeah, see if she could either share, if she could
Yeah.
record
I'd
it
be
or share the
comfortable if
slides.
I'd be comfortable if you're open to just saving all the presentation too.
Well,
But of course.
we usually
someone-
record it too. So,
Yeah,
I think that would be
we'll take care of that.
Yeah.
And then if you wanted to.
Yeah, if you could do that, I'd
That'd be
like to
awesome.
learn
All
more.
right, we'll do
But-
that.
But I think we would like to accept the funds and the villages would like us very much to accept the funds.
Yes, please.
Very
Can we
much.
like vote to accept the funds?
I think we have to.
Do we need to?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
I make a motion to accept the funds from the American Rescue Plan.
I'll go ahead and second that motion. Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Just so
No one.
excited to see it.
Carrie, very good.
I mean, I sort of think that my thought has been, you know, because I watch politics like sports, I think that it's about the infrastructure federal plan not being locked down yet, but then it's like the state doesn't want to promise certain infrastructure things if they know it's gonna be covered in the federal money. I think that's what the maybe the delay has been.
That
But we'll
makes
see.
sense. Hopefully things will pan out soon.
It's difficult times there. All right, now we have our committee reports. Councilor Creasel, you're up.
Yes, Supervisor, thanks so much. So tomorrow, we have a press conference at 10 o'clock in the morning at William Sunderland's house in the village of Fayetteville. He is someone who has heat pumps, he has geothermal, and he also participates in community solar. So he was really the ideal place to launch our Get Sustainable, Manlius exclamation point campaign.
Okay.
Italicized, which we partnered with Heat Smart CNY. They're handling the heat pumps and the energy efficiency component. So you don't have to have heat pumps. You don't have to have geothermal. You can, if you sign up to do energy efficiency, that counts. So it's not like we need to sign up 10 people for a rather expensive infrastructure investment for one's own home. And then Omni Renewables is handling the community solar component. And just to remind everyone, these are two separate campaigns. If we do 10 of either one, we will get $5,000 respectively from NYSERDA and continuing the Clean Energy Communities Initiative. So I will be speaking in the press conference tomorrow and emceeing. So here's hoping I wake up tomorrow and don't sound like this.
Oh, my God. Well, you know, you have to save your voice.
I know. This whole meeting, I've just been like, man, I'm doing a lot of talking for someone who doesn't sound good.
So I wanted to ask, do we have, I'm assuming there is a URL a person could go to find out more or apply or how, I'm interested.
What do you mean,
I would like to,
like a URL where one can sign up?
I want to sign up for one of these campaigns. How do I?
Great question. Well, we're in the process of making hand fill outable cards that we can hand out to people at events, because we will be announcing hopefully at least one event tomorrow, town hall event. Allison's gonna get back to me on the date to see if that's available. I also inquired at Spill the Tea, and Ryan Dunn, our community chair, is looking at the pavilion in the village of Manlius. So we'll be having events that are educational in nature. Typically what happens is people come to those, they learn. This was what Solar ICNY was. It's following the model that I did it's like the old crews back together again. We're just doing a little bit different material. But we'll be doing educational sessions all summer and fall.
Will those fill outable cards be available here at Town Hall perhaps at some point in the future?
I think that we could make that happen, Counselor.
Fantastic.
Perhaps you could help me get it online.
Let's do it.
So I have a question for Sustainable Manlius on that. So if I'm a person who knows generally, I should probably have an energy audit on my home. Like I went to fill out and see who could do my energy audit, and I signed up and how quick thing. And that's great.
I saw them in your driveway.
Yeah, they were there. And that was great. And they gave me, the quick and dirty on heat pumps, and also, it's great for us because we were thinking about replacing some big things, whatever. Anyways, really interesting. But I realized that I should go, I don't know the next steps. So I just want to ask if Sustainable Manlius is going to help citizens think about, have a basic understanding of why Omni Renewables, like how do you choose, like, can you tell us why Omni Renewables is great, which I know you can. And then also, do I have to do every part sort of get the benefit? And if I own my home versus rent in the community, what are my options? All that stuff.
All those things will be answered in the educational sessions. So I would encourage everyone to attend the one that we're going to do here at some point. So 10 a.m. tomorrow, you're all invited to come.
Zoom.
Well, it's in real life. You can physically be there. If you want.
No, I'm gonna be in the Zoom.
I was like, I'm not making you Zoom.
I know, I've got 2 morning, it's crazy tomorrow, that's what I do.
Just,
I will be there. Thank you so
you'll
much.
be there?
Yes.
Does anyone know if they'll be attending in the morning at 10?
I'll try to be there.
Okay, it's not coming, Sarah.
I'm not gonna.
Okay, not coming. All right, others, we do. But it should be good. Tim, you should come. It'll be a fun time. Karen, you want to come?
Come back to
I
Manlius one more time.
Okay.
Tim loves
I
me.
have other
Now, if you have other clients,
Yeah,
come
you
on,
believe it.
I don't believe it.
So that is, I'm gonna hand it over to Sarah to talk about the next
The
component.
climate smart part?
Yes, so,
Okay, go ahead.
so some of you may know that New York State does give away grants except for last year. And they do it in a process called the Consolidated Funding Application. And so that came out in May, it's due in July as normal. And there's an opportunity for the town of Manlius to apply for 3 elements, which I did not write down, but 3
Okay.
components of climate smart communities, one of which is comprehensive planning, I remember that one.
Okay.
And the other one is, I think, sidewalks, and there's a third. So we would be, so I'm announcing here today for the residents to know that we do plan to apply for this in conjunction with the Central New York Planning Board. They're gonna help write it. We might then discover in December, we will not hear before then, that we got it.
Oh, okay.
So we are going to be putting, it's a 50-50 deal. So we are planning to put the 50% of whatever the cost of these initiatives would be in our state, in our budget, which we will have to put in before we know if we're getting the other half.
For 2022.
22.
Okay.
So,
So it's gonna kind of muck up the budget.
so for the budgeting,
Well, we're
we'll,
gonna have a few.
we'll put our half in the assumption that we get the other
Yeah.
half from the state.
Yeah, okay.
But we don't have to spend it. If we don't get the other half,
Right,
you know,
right, right.
no harm, no foul. But just for people to understand that
Okay.
we will have passed the budget before we find out if we
Yeah,
get
yeah.
the grant.
Mhm.
And
Have
I,
any idea,
In number?
Sarah?
around 50,000, so we would put up 25.
Oh, okay. All right,
Oh,
that's
pretty
that's not too bad.
For comprehensive planning, we already have plans
We've
to
already,
budget.
yeah, that's
so-
budget, but this provides more climate smart components to that.
Right, and we're gonna be pursuing other things that help, like the urban forestry program and, you know, other kinds of grants too. And thank goodness to our partners in the planning board, the regional planning
They'll
board.
be
for their support.
helping with the sustainability elements, is that correct? Sarah?
Yes. So, so they're really taking the worker bee part. And so there'll probably be a couple of pieces they're gonna need from you, but they're gonna do the writing, so it will not be you. So that, I just wanted to make that announcement.
All right, very good, thank you.
I just had a quick
Sure.
sustainable Manlius update as well.
Oh, all right,
So through-
I'll add you to the list.
Thank you. So Sustainable Manlius has an EV committee that is interested in adding EV infrastructure in the town. Last year, we partnered, one of our residents did a study in the town, which is on our website.
Yeah.
And a few meetings ago, we heard from ESF students that much of our town's greenhouse gases come from our vehicles. So with that in mind, I'll be working with Ann to apply for a grant from NYSERDA to help us hopefully install EV charging stations at the town hall in the parking lot behind here. So I wanted to make sure everyone's on the same page and I'm hoping to be able to bring more details about this project, hopefully in July. But I wanted to give an update. So if anyone does have any questions, I know there will be questions. Please start sending those to me and I'm happy to answer those. And I'll be.
One quick question.
Yes, absolutely.
What kind of grant dollars are we talking about?
So the NYSERDA grant is $4,000 per port. So we're looking into potentially adding 4 ports to the back parking lot.
4 times 4.
Well, yeah, so it's 2 machines, but 4 ports.
It's what?
2 chargers,
Oh.
but each charger has 2 ports in it.
Oh, I
So that's what we're looking into to see if we can,
It's actually pretty much, there's one of those stations in the municipal lot just down the
Just
road.
like,
yeah,
I
Oh,
think
yeah,
it's,
right,
I think
right
it's,
over
I think it's almost the exact same
Yeah.
one.
that's what we're looking
And
into.
there will be 2 of them.
So you'll put a summary together
I'm gonna
for
put a
us?
summary together, and I'm looking into any additional funds that we do need. I need to make sure we have those. And then the installation, there's also a grant for the installation, and that covers 90% of that. So there's lots of grant funding.
Is
So
there a space out there for this?
yes, absolutely. And I've already talked to Rob
Oh,
about
wow,
snow
okay.
plowing and yeah, making sure that the space is all good. We're looking at there's a utility pole out there.
So this would be a community EV?
Yeah, so it would be for public use. And then hopefully eventually the town potentially will
Do they,
acquire some EVs and we could charge them.
oh, that was the question.
yeah. They would be given preference, the town EVs would be given
Well, I
preference.
feel
at that
like if we do end up buying vehicles, probably want to install ports alongside that.
Oh, yeah, for the
For them,
town, but
yeah.
I was talking about public.
So the public would be able to use these in town, it has to be networked as well, so then town, we can have different accounts, it's really.
Okay, interesting. All right. very good.
We're also looking at electric vehicles for the
Straight down
town,
the
so then,
street.
my apologies, Supervisor, we're also looking at electric vehicles for the town that like the planning department could use. They'd then be able to charge at the charging stations that we will install.
George,
There
it's
might be
gonna be an
some
interesting
discretionary
budget
funding,
next
right?
year.
Yeah.
I have
Is
to
that
show
any
you,
Teslas?
No,
probably not a Tesla.
Well, no, I think like Chevy and Ford, I think both have fleet vehicles that
Yeah,
are very affordable. They don't have all the bells and whistles, but
right,
you know, I will say, my wife and I did just purchase an electric vehicle.
What kind
and
did you
being able to, what's that?
what kind did you get?
The same as you.
Haha,
Although,
what first?
I'll argue about that.
They copied
I
me.
still have a hard time with the electric Mustang, I'm sorry.
I have it is.
A lot of
fast.
Mustangs on 90 also had an issue with us being.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
this-
was in a red light next to an old Mustang and I was like, vroom, vroom.
There was a
Like,
couple-
It matters what music you play inside the car.
I think it was Beyonce, so it was
Right,
So I'm
I
gonna
looked at-
stick with the new e-bike.
Yeah,
Oh, I got
Yeah.
it.
That's cool.
but what I will say, it'll be really nice to have those vehicles. They are complete, the maintenance is at a bare minimum
Oh,
of
it's
what
like
actually
almost nothing.
needs to be done. Basically,
There's no
other than
engine.
tires for the
Yeah.
life of the vehicle.
Yeah.
And then they're, you know, if they get charged and plugged in, they're always at almost near full capacity at all times.
Okay.
And it's great because you can sit down, go, and the air conditioning is already at full blast.
So
And you don't have to feel bad about wasting.
And
gas
I
on
will
the
give
machine.
you a ride in the car. We will go 0 to 60. It'll blow your mind.
You're not gonna let me drive?
No, absolutely not. You can sit in the back.
Oh.
But I'll drive you around.
What if I do? It's in the VIP car.
Yeah. You're in the, yeah, you can sit next to the car seat. It'll be fine.
Oh. So, anything else on that?
That's it.
Okay. The other thing I have, just to wrap things up, is I sent you out the extension on the amendment to the stable value.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which really now gives us a little more time,
Thank you.
so that we
Appreciate
can meet PBA again, I think. we should
I
do
think we
that.
need to.
Yeah, I mean, let's do a redo.
Yeah, I think we need to.
After meeting with the highway, I think it's important that we do that. And we're gonna reach out to the administration here in the town,
Yeah,
and as well as the administration at the police department.
Yeah.
Because we have them over there, so.
yeah, it occurred to me, I wondered if it would be on the agenda or if it was gonna come when it wasn't on the agenda, we were confused, so I thought we haven't spoken to that.
Well, when I got this from Dan, it was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Thank you.
A little relief there.
Yeah,
So, but,
That's good.
anyway, so that was all I had, so I need a motion to adjourn.
No, we need to
no,
go
it's
executive
executive
session.
session,
And
I'll
we'll do
make a
executive
motion-
session.
I'll make a motion to go into executive session.
and
to
I will
discuss
Litigation.
second that,
Litigation issue.
and I will second.
Second that, all in favor?
Right.
Opposed? Carried. So I got a little excited.
Almost there. So-
To adjourn.
Wait,
Also to
Oh,
adjourn.
oh, Allison? Oh, we have to, not live yet?
now.
Now we're good, all right.
And I'll make a motion to adjourn, or no, to come out of executive session.
No,
We already did that, so
Okay,
now we're
to
adjourned.
adjourn.
Okay.
Alright.
Second,
Second.
second, all in favor?
Aye.